Okay. Finally start this series for mindfully center approach. I've been thinking and planning and everything about doing this for quite a few years. Um, finally have a really decent scope of what I want to do. Um, before this, I have piecemeals. There's a functional human system that I want to even write a book, but it's still not complete. So now the scope is really I want to develop a clinical manual for anyone who's interested in Chinese medicine, essentially, or in medicine in general, or health in general, fitness in general. Um, so here we go. So we start with an overview. So I want to start with two stories. After I graduated and before I took the California acupuncture certification test, I visit a acupuncturist in a clinic. She's a friend of mine, and I visit her around noontime during school, the lunch hours of the school breaks, basically. So I went to see her, and the owner actually showed up that day. The owner, she's an acupuncturist as well, three-generation acupuncturist. Her dad and her grandfather are also acupuncturists. Um, and she looked at me and said, "Well, I heard that you do channels." I say, "Yes, I do." And then she asked, asked me to take a look at her and say, she had high blood pressure for a long time, chronic high blood pressure. She's probably in her 40s, and looks, lean and thin and active and everything else. But she says she has been having this high blood pressure for a long time and seeing, multiple Chinese medicine doctors and Western doctors as well. Um, so I was, I certainly did not have my license at that time. So I scanned her channels, and her gallbladder channel, and we'll cover this in the channel section. Her gallbladder channel that basically essentially goes from the side of the head down the side of the body all the way down to the little toe, um, basically got stopped around the knee, around her right knee. And so I asked her, it's like, do you have a, you know, accident or scars or anything like that from the knee to down to the toe? And she looked at me like I can see through her pants. So she pulled up her pants and on the right side, lateral side of her right lower leg, there is a very long scar. So I asked her, do you want me to needle you, or do you want your, um, in-house acupuncturist to needle you? Because I did not have a license at that time. And she looked at me again and say, no, I want you to needle me. So I did. And then I left and I told my friend to remove the needles after about 20 minutes. 2 weeks later, I went back to that same clinic and the owner was there as well. And when she saw me, she actually bowed to me and called me master. She said the high blood pressure went away that very same night and hasn't come back since. Um, so that's one story. There's another story, an acupuncture friend in LA. Um, and we got to talk. He was really excited to see me and with his clinic and everything. He told me he has this 7-point treatment for every patient that he has. And he said it worked like wonders. So like works for everybody, right? And we keep talking, and later he actually asked me, it's like, John, I have this lower back pain and the shoulder pain and the neck pain and a few more issues. And so, what could he do? And for a moment, honestly, I look at him as it's like, you're kidding me, right? Don't you have a magical 7-point treatment that applies to everybody? Um, so these two stories really kind of sum up why I want to develop MCA in the first place. I am certainly no master. I don't see myself as master at all, right? I feel um, I don't have any special gifts. So being a master is not needed. We don't need, or at least, in my opinion, we don't need years or decades or generations or thousands of years of accumulated whatever to be a master. We do not. All we need to do is to get out of the protocol treatment and start to really, treat with a good framework, right? A good framework is like a good terrain map. Okay. We go to Hawaii, for example, as an explorer, right? And we need a terrain map. We can't just go in and try to figure things out on the spot, right? Um, so in my opinion, when we have a good framework or a good terrain map, then we can employ or we can incorporate or we can practice, based on a feedback system rather than protocol. It's like, oh, high blood pressure, then these points or these herbs or these formulas or whatever. It doesn't work because a protocol has an end. And if the end doesn't work, we don't know why. If it worked, we don't know how to, we don't know why either, right? That's the very definition of a protocol. On a feedback system, it is very, very different. We can try something, and if it doesn't work, we know how to change it. We have all the dials and we have all the switches or whatever we have, to change it, right? Um, like a photographer, if I have a point and shoot camera, if I take a good photo, I can't repeat it. If I take a bad one, I can't fix it, right? Um, so cameras, for exposure, there are three dials: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Okay. So with these three dials, I can take three photos and get perfect exposure like in any lighting condition. Why? Because then every photo becomes an input to my feedback system, which I can tune. So in my opinion, it's Chinese medicine or not, or any medicine, right? Or in life, we need to establish a feedback system within a good framework. And that to me is what my MCA is about. And then we cultivate based on this framework, and we continue to use this feedback system, continue to refine our framework based on the feedback system, right? And all we have left are not book knowledge anymore. Are not what we heard from this and the case study that we did and even what I'm gonna share with you, right? You're gonna have your own first-hand experience. And to me, that is the ultimate of anything that we do in life. We gotta have first-hand experience. My acupuncture friend in LA, you know, um, has this magic thing that worked for everybody but himself. And to me, um, that actually, I had the fortune of go to Chinese medicine school for 3 years, 9 semesters, actually 9 trimesters. And then I was teaching there for two or 3 years. And then I have a clinic right above the school. So I've seen people come and go. Okay. I've seen, originally my own classmates and then my students and then other people that, new students come, they spend 3 or 4 years and then they leave school. Okay. Everybody I want to, every person that I meet, I really want to grab them and say, does Chinese medicine work for you? Do not just learn to treat people. If you can't experience firsthand Chinese medicine, you're missing a lot. You're missing something that's very, very dramatic because Chinese medicine is not knowledge-based. It is experience-based. It is firsthand experience-based. And when we are able to experience ourselves firsthand, honestly, everyone is the same. Everyone is the same. And I'll prove to you, or I'll try to prove to you, at least I've proven this to myself based on the, the functional human system, which I'll explain today. Okay. So my journey in the past, basically 15, 16 years, or 10 years actually, maybe, at least as far as Chinese medicine is concerned, it went from inspiration, which I read a book by Dr. Janice Haddock. I should have a link somewhere. I will put this link somewhere else. And this inspiration actually came when I was studying, I was taking a class on emotional tuina, basically massage class. And during one of the class breaks, a good friend of mine asked a question to the teacher and said, "Do you know a lady in Santa Cruz that treats Parkinson's disease?" The teacher didn't know, but I heard this question. And that very night, I came home and I actually found this person. Right? Her name is Dr. Janice Haddock. She had a Parkinson's disease recovery website. It's called pdrecovery.org. And at that time, she has essentially all her books. Okay, she written Tracking the Dragon, Recovery from Parkinson, Once Upon a Pill, Yin Tui Na. I think all these books were on her website. I read through these like there's no tomorrow. And after that, very soon after that, I basically ended my engineering career and went to Chinese medicine school full time. Because for the very first time after reading her Tracking the Dragon, I felt this immense amount of calling. Finally, Chinese medicine makes sense to me. Finally, I'm actually totally fluent in Chinese in terms of reading, writing, and comprehension. But all the books that I read, all the ancient texts that I read, never explain how things work. It's always this point does this and this and this, right? This herb does this and this and this. This channel flows like that, right? And when you see a disease like this is what you do. It never truly explain how and why. So it's a protocol. And I have a lot of issue with protocols because protocols gets me very, very frustrated because when it works, I don't know how it works. When it doesn't, I don't know how to fix it. It's a serious problem for me. And as an engineer, this is not acceptable at all. So I went to Chinese medicine school. I went through my, trimesters of reverence. I soak up every theory, take notes of every teacher, study these, study that, volunteer to take the hot needle, we have these needle techniques where a needle is actually burned first to almost red hot and then inserted, right below the belly button. And I volunteer for that. And literally have a scar for probably a year or so. And there's so many things that I've never experienced, right? There's Qigong, there's calculation based on uh, birth year, month, and date, and to come up with, prescriptions and treatments and predictions of this person's life. And um, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? So for the first two trimesters, I was enjoying this thing. I was soaking things up and really um, in constant reverence of the things around me. And then I had the opportunity to be part of the clinic front desk. So I started to see patients coming in and out, coming in and out, week after week after week. Then when I went, began to take clinical classes and started seeing patients more closely or in the presence of the professors and the teachers, with 30 plus years of experience, um, I start to wonder because I don't see people, patients get better, but I do see their files get bigger. You know, some people have come in for 3, 4 years with the same symptom, only worse. What's up with all the magical stuff? So I started to ask questions. I started to ask very, very fundamental, basic questions about yin yang theory, about five element theory, and I couldn't get fair answers. Um, so I literally went through maybe a couple of trimesters of pure frustration. I was very, very frustrated at that time. Um, very frustrated, actually. Every basic question that I ask, when I get no answer, the the general reply was, go study more. You will understand, right? But I'm not seeing results. These are real patients coming in. And what's worse is, at that time, my classmates will get sick, right? We'll have, all the classical Chinese medicine signs and symptoms, and they're not getting well either by using all the magical things that we learned. They're not getting well. So I finally was able to turn my frustration into energy, right? Frustration is anger, and anger is a tremendous energy, actually. Then I went ahead and um, develop the functional human system, which I really need a framework, right? At that point, all I want to do is like, okay, this framework that I'm learning in Chinese medicine school is not working. You can't just say, okay, if you go from yin yang theory, if it doesn't work, go to five element. If it doesn't work, go to deeper, go to this and go to that, go to that. All of a sudden we have five or six, um, you know, very different or not fully complementary, not fully coherent um, systems, and just pick the one that worked, right? Pick the one that makes sense. And that's not a coherent system to me, right? I want a coherent framework. So that's what I'll share later. And I developed a whole bunch of mindsets. Okay, a lot of things, for example, helping a person, right? To me, after a while, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. We live in society or even in a world where help is everywhere, but everybody is helpless. We need to help ourselves. Okay. The only person that can truly, truly change us is us, period. If we could help another person, if a parent can help another child, there will be no suffering in this world. So I have a whole bunch of these mindset that doesn't in the surface doesn't sound right. It doesn't seem right. But this is how I operate because to me, I need to find a way to empower not just myself, but anybody whom I have the opportunity to see and to meet and to share. So I literally have people coming into the clinic and they're like at the door. Then, I normally have a group when I was in the clinic, and we will ask, it's like, what are you here for? And you say, oh, I need some help, with my knee. And we all laugh and say, you're in the wrong place. There's no help here. But if you're willing to take care of yourself, come on in. So the very refusal, it's not even a refusal, the absence of the concept of help to me is empowering, because I can only treat a person an hour out of a week. I have minimum, if any, impact on the person's transformation. And to me, if the person somehow resonate with what I share, this person has this already. So I have a whole bunch of these mindsets, which I will share after functional human system. And then I integrate with Tui Na, which is massage. And I do this very, very simply. Okay. I don't have all the techniques. Okay. I know there are massage school that teach, 10 different kinds of massage techniques around the world. I don't have that at all. Okay. Um, so then I integrate with Tui Na, which is massage. I integrate with channels, which is, again, very, very simple channels. Okay. No acupuncture points, because I do not believe in acupuncture points. Acupuncture channels are like rivers, and acupuncture points are like rivers. I'm sorry, cities along the rivers. The flood doesn't always happen along at the cities. The flood can happen anytime. The blockage can happen anytime. The diversion of a river can happen at any point along the river path. And then I integrate with neuromuscular system, and some of the brain things and stuff like that. Okay. And then cultivation. Okay. And cultivation get us to move on, move from knowledge, right? Which I do have a story to share to demonstrate that knowledge honestly is basically useless until it's felt, okay, until we have firsthand experience. And all these, before I graduated from Chinese medicine school, I have this mindfully centered approach. Okay? Mindfully centered just, to me, just means I'm not biased. Okay, I am living. I do not want to miss anything. If I'm biased, I'm going to miss something. Um, when a person is in front of me, I do not want to miss anything. Okay. So before we go into the functional human system, there are two things I want to emphasize. The first thing is trust me not. Do not trust me. Okay. I do not want, because I despise protocol systems. This is not a protocol system. So this system should not be copied. Okay, should not be trusted. This system needs to be verified by you, by anybody who is willing and kind enough to try it, to experience it. And when you do, you're free to modify or edit or enhance or however you want to do this. When you do, this entire system becomes yours. Your system may be identical as mine, but it's yours. It's not mine. So these are, to me, I cannot emphasize this enough. Okay. Functional human system. So this is the entire system, okay, the entire diagram. I'm going to walk through all these boxes. But before that, let's take a look at why I name it functional. Okay, so I'm not a very precise person. In the clinic, I don't see, I really don't see the full value. I'm sure there's some value, but I don't see the value of being precise about anatomy, brain regions, muscles and bones and, whatever. Okay. Um, because to me, I just need to be functional. Okay. I need something really, really, um, simple and fast and almost subconscious. I need something functional. Okay, I don't want to remember things. I, in fact, I cannot remember things very well. Um, I need to be able to almost like I can drive this car, subconsciously. I don't need to consciously drive this car. I can allow all my senses to operate in the subconscious level. You know, I don't want to go through a checklist of, you know, what this person, left shoulder, right shoulder, is it even, or how about the nose and the mouth and da da. I don't want to go through this checklist. Okay? I want all these things to be done by just looking without any judgment, without any conception. All I need to do is to be mindful that I'm looking at this person and I'm connecting to this person at a different level and allow these little things to just being processed subconsciously. A lot of people can do this very easily. I want to do that. Okay. And a lot of times I feel like the emphasis on being precise and being anatomically correct actually distract me from doing this. But everybody is different. Okay. If being precise works for you, feel free to change this system. Okay. Um, so that's functional human system. Okay. And you're probably gonna hear something that doesn't feel right. For example, when I say limbic brain, you know, handles emotion, and midbrain handles clarity, or left and right brain handles judgment. Reptilian brain does the reflex. Again, these are just functional blocks. Okay. In fact, I have gone so far to say, okay, instead of the brains, let's call them noble horses. Okay. Um, which I would mention later. Okay, so this is the entire functional human system. So we have the input coming into our brain system. Okay, change our channel modes or neurological modes. Like fight and flight and rest and heals. In Chinese medicine, we actually have two more modes. Okay. And the channel modes or the neurological modes actually affect our body and affect our thoughts, which then feedback into this brain system and then continue to do this. Okay. And let me walk through this. So we all have our five senses, right? So these five senses are all, receiving external inputs. Our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, right? So, so these are the external inputs, into based on the five senses that come into um, our system, right? Along with the internal thought, that becomes six inputs into the brain. Okay. So that's essentially what it is, right? So we got five senses and plus thought, and then start to go into the brain. Okay. And what's interesting is because it's a feedback system, right? Over time, we don't need these external inputs anymore. Our body and our thought can automatically generate inputs into our brain system and allow this whole thing to work. Okay. For example, I treated a lady, she has some interesting lung issues. And when I ask her, it's like, okay, what's your lifestyle? How do you eat? Do you exercise? How's your sleep? And everything is perfect. Okay. Um, until I asked her, it's like, how are you emotionally? She said she was betrayed by her husband, who was a priest, uh, actually not a priest, a pastor, um, 40 years ago, and she's still not over it. Okay. Her ex-husband had a stroke and was on wheelchair, and he's basically living quite miserably. But she couldn't let go. And when I asked her, "Is like, are you willing to change that?" She said, "No, I didn't do anything wrong." Her son, who drove 3 hours from Sacramento to see me, um, was visibly depressed. He actually had kidney issues and um, have to endure, have to, go through, have to live through this daily conflict, essentially, right? And I think this is essentially how this thing works, right? This external stimulus, the betrayal happened 40 years ago. It's long gone. Possibly in a few years, the husband won't be in this world at all, right? However, the body and the thought continue um, the suffering, essentially. Right? It's worthwhile to take a note that we have these native processing channels or native processors. Okay, um, I'm talking right now, but for somebody who is extremely visual, again, all these are spectrum based. Okay, I'm not very visual, but some people can be super visual. A an autistic person, um, like Temple Grandin, for example, right, is extremely visual, right? Her visual processing is way, way, way on the extreme side of the spectrum, right? So what does that mean? That means when the person receives an input, it needs to be first translated into pictures. Okay, so there's a translation somewhere in this functional human system where the eyes see something, it needs to get translated into or hear something. I'm sorry. When the ear hears something, that needs to be translated into image, and then that can be processed by her brain. Okay, her um, native tongue, I guess, is not words. Her native um, processing unit is images. Okay, I think Temple Grandin actually shared the story when she was young in kindergarten. The teacher asked, "Okay, what did you guys do for summer?" People are raising hands left and right, and da da da, right? Um, and you know, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or maybe even longer later, she raised her hand and started to, to answer that question with the most descriptive and vivid story. And the whole class laughed because they had moved on to reading or painting or something like that. So a highly visual person or highly auditory person or essentially nowadays we call it neurodivergent person actually has to do the translation from words to whatever their native processing unit is, and then process from there, and then make sense out of it, and then formulate the reply, for example, make a movie using more pictures and review that movie, shuffle the images around so it makes sense, and then translate it back to words. So we need to keep that in mind, right? Um, so now all of us are the same. And in the clinic, we're going to see people um, who suffer. A lot of times it's because their native processing unit or native processing language is different than mainstream, or they're right um, where they are mainstream, but they're not really mainstream. They're just slower than anybody else. They may have the most beautiful and most expensive inner landscape. Um, but every time they try to express that, their timing is off because they need time to process that. And in normal conversation, we don't allow that. So to me, this is, and I had the fortune to treat a few people like that, and I learned quite deeply, what their world is. Okay, so this is the external and internal input. Okay, so once the inputs are in, they reach the brain system. Okay, the first thing they reach, it's actually interesting to me. Again, this is functional. Okay, so don't quote me on um, being anatomically correct. So we actually share the reptilian brain with the reptiles, essentially. Okay. It's actually fascinating to me that our brain system doesn't grow, like grow bigger, like a child grow into into adult. Our brain system is actually like the reptilian brain is covered by limbic brain and then by the higher level brains. It's almost like you got the reptilian brain, then you put on a helmet, then you put on another helmet, right? So maybe over time, over another 100,000 years or something like that, we'll grow another helmet. Then we are even more intelligent, right? But anyway, so this input reaches the reptilian brain first. Okay. Um, oh, this is the body thought feedback loop. Okay. Um, so it reaches the reptilian brain and it has a reflex database. So anything that's green in this diagram is actually a database. Okay. So we have building database. We have building reflex, right? A flying closer to our eyes and we close our eyes, right? Uh, so we have these sensors, right? Like dogs have these I forgot what's called, but a thicker hair basically, or like a tube, right? So they use that to really avoid things, right? And so the reptilian brain, based on whatever that's in the reflex database, generate commands. Okay. So that's what reptilian brain does. Okay. Very quick, right? All the reflex are here. The commands are immediate. Okay. No processing at all. This is life-saving reflex. They cannot be processed. They cannot say, okay, is this the right thing to do or not? Or how do I feel about a car is going to hit me or whatever. Okay. When we're in a split second life or death situation, right? Or we miss a step and we're about to fall, it kicks in. It kicks in. Okay. Unless we're rigid and hurt or something like that, right? So this is a very simple system. The reflex database can be trained, right? We're all born with a certain amount of reflex, but reflex can be trained, right? That's what Dancing is for, sports are for, martial arts are for, you name it. Right? This system has one issue that I see in the clinic. Okay. So let's say I was about to hit a tree at high speed, and my reptilian brain, based on reflex, command both of my arms to cover my face. But I did not. Okay, I did not have time to do that, or I was restrained from, from doing that. Either way, I did not. The command was issued, but I did not finish the command. And later on, my arms are not right. Okay, my arms want to move, and so I have to suppress it, and it seems like it has a mind of its own, and so I have to suppress it some more. And over time, I develop rigidity of my arms. I see this in the clinic very, very often. I see this, in people who have traumas, either accidents or abuse or violence. Okay, I see people falling from horses, and they develop this rigidity. Um, and with Tui Na, massage, gentle massage, right, or even holding an arm or a leg or something like that, we can actually feel there's this rigidity, this high, very, very extremely high tension. It's like I don't want to move. Okay. Um, so in the clinic, what we do is, I call this the pending reptilian brain commands. Okay, because the commands are issued, but they never got executed. So they're pending. So what we do in the clinic is at appropriate time, and I'll try to define what that time means. We release these pending reptilian brain commands. Okay. This is very similar to certain body work where the body release things. Okay. Um, and I always feel like the body doesn't really remember, but the things are actually in the brain. Okay. The body is basically a processing, body executes. Okay, the neuromuscular system is executes whatever that's demand, whatever whatever it's asked to do or forced to do. Okay, the next level up is the limbic system. Okay. So it takes things from to me, again, this is not precise. Okay. So essentially the input comes in, goes through the reptilian brain and pass on to the limbic and pass to the midbrain and pass to the left and right brain. Okay. Um, they're processing sequence. They're not processing parallel. Okay. So it gets to the limbic brain, and limbic brain has a huge trigger database. And when the inputs matches the triggers, okay, so essentially the triggers are, in computer term, it's a lookup table. Okay, it's like on one side, it's okay, this sound or this smell or this type of person or whatever, right? And then on the other side, it's like generate anger, generate sadness, generate panic, generate whatever. Okay, so what the limbic brain does is it takes the input passed from the reptilian brain system, matches the trigger database, and if it matches, it generates emotions. Okay. And because to me, the worst thing, and literally this is the worst thing in the world, is we have positive and negative emotions. We do not have positive or negative emotions. All emotions are true. All emotions are true. Okay. Let me give you a story. So a 84-year-old lady from Italy visit her daughter, and they both came to my mom's house. And she was lay on the table, and basically we were having a good time. Okay. She was very relaxed, and both me and her daughter were working on her, so she was having a great time. And it was November, and my mom's central heater, my mom's house was built in 1960, so the central heater came on. Boom! And in an instant, the 84-year-old lady got into panic. She was rigid, her eyes were open wide. She was in panic. And she was literally shaking and asking her daughter, "What's that sound? What's that sound?" Her daughter said, "Oh, it was just the air conditioning, or I'm sorry, the heater came on." Okay. The central heater came on. And the 84-year-old lady, speaking in Italian to her daughter, she said, it sounded just like the World War II bombers. World War II ended 80 years ago. So this is what's happening. Okay. So this can easily be explained in the functional human system. So there's external input, which is around, when she was 4 years old, Allies was bombing Italy. And every time they hear this bomber coming in, she has to run for cover. So this installed a entry in her trigger database. You hear this sound, you run for your life. You hear the sound, you run for your life. This was a life-saving triggers for her when she was 4 years old. This was a life-saving trigger for a lot of people in war zones during that time. They all have this trigger. So when she hears this similar sound again, it triggers and generate panic. This is why I call limbic brain, or this entire limbic system, the truth noble horse, because it tells the truth. It's not about positive or negative, good emotion or bad emotion. It's about true emotion. Based on what? Based on installed triggers that may be out of date. But all these triggers were this person's entire life experience. So to me, in the clinic, when I see people with PTSD, with addiction, with anxiety, OCD, different personality, whatever, the first thing I do is to say, all your emotions are true. Because what we do in this world, in the face of positive and negative emotions, is every time we feel these so-called negative emotions, we literally stab ourselves. We judge ourselves. Here I go again. When can I take this evil part of me out? We don't have an evil part. Nobody has an evil part. We have these triggers that are out of date, especially PTSD. Right? PTSD has a lot of these triggers. Very, very hypervigilance is essentially hair triggers. Okay, any blow of the wind, boom, triggers. Okay, danger, danger, danger. Okay, that's what hypervigilance means. So all emotions are true. Okay. Then we move on to the midbrain. Okay. Again, it's functional. Okay. Midbrain has no database. Midbrain connects to our heart. Midbrain also sits, okay, where the limbic brain and reptilian brain, the noble horse of truth and boundaries sits in the subconscious. We have no control of them. We have no direct control of them for sure. But the midbrain actually sits in between conscious and subconscious. So it has access to both sides. Isn't that cool? At least that's my, you know, that's what I believe in. Okay. And many of my patients actually experience this firsthand. How the midbrain, when they come online, when it's being activated, it resolves a lot of their issues. They start to have inner harmony. Because what happened is when our midbrain, the heart is out of the picture, essentially it's a fight between the left and right brain, the conscious side with the subconscious side. I have the emotion of anger or sadness or fear or something like that. And the left and right brain would just like, hey, just give it a rest. Okay, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? So we live in constant disharmony until our heart comes in, until our midbrain comes in to harmonize the entire system. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. So the midbrain essentially to me is like, first of all, midbrain has been suppressed in general in humanity since humanity starts, basically. Why? Because a person um, who is midbrain activated is free. This person will think for herself, and that's a very scary thing for people in power, in authority. To tell us what to do, what to believe. Where where to go for spiritual guidance. This is not allowed. And then in the modern time, we go to school, and all of a sudden, every question has a right answer. Oh my goodness. You go to Chinese medicine school, it's the same thing. You'll figure this is supposed to be, the medicine of enlightenment. Um, Not quite so. If you ask simple questions, okay, yin yang theory, the very fundamental concept of yin yang theory is night turns into days and days turn into nights. Okay? So yin turns into yang and yang turns into yin in a cycle. But the sun never rises nor sets. The earth goes around the sun, and the earth rotates along its own axis to generate the night and day. And the earth goes around the sun to generate the four seasons. So the yin yang theory is only valid for people who are on earth and observing this thing and think they're the center of the universe. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's not a universal law. So when you ask these simple questions, and when you question about five-element theory with equally simple questions, there's no answer. The heart, the midbrain, tend to ask these simple questions. And you can find this in anything, okay, in any authority, in any politics, in any religion, in any medicine. So when we say to me, okay, this functional human system, it really is about activating our fully suppressed, okay, or mostly suppressed, or highly suppressed midbrain system, because it's the only brain system that can harmonize our entire um, being, essentially. So enlightened being has, you know, you know, Western or Eastern, over time, every enlightened person essentially, expressed the same thing. Why? To me, it's because we all have this hardware, we all have this mechanism. We're all Buddha because we all have this. We just need to activate it. There's no magic at all. And I'm sure everybody in their life have experienced this immense clarity. And that's the sign, like, our inside are just in pure harmony. In the clinic, we have very simple ways to activate our midbrain. Okay, and I'll explain that later. Okay, then we go to our left and right brain, and based on the knowledge database, which is everything we learn, right? Everything, um, from school, from family, from home, from church, from temple, from whatever, right? From the internet, from YouTube, from whatever. It's all here. And a lot of them are in conflict. For example, we learn to love and to become compassionate, but we also learn to sacrifice for our country. And somehow sacrifice is a noble thing. So there is a lot of conflict within this whole system. And we judge, right? My religion is better than yours. Your religion is evil, right? Or certain countries are evil, or certain people are evil. But what's interesting is, from a religion standpoint, if we exchange places, if we exchange birthplace, which are probably 500 miles apart, 1,000 miles apart, we'll be arguing for the different sides. So knowledge is highly, highly, in my opinion, okay, knowledge is highly biased. Okay. What we learn about loyalty, sacrifice, a lot of things to me are when we put in the big picture, and that's really the source of a lot of the suffering. Um, for example, we have the concept of, I'm helping my family, I'm sacrificing for my family, right? Uh, even I sacrifice for my country. The amount of injustice and righteousness is tremendous. Every time we help, we have expectation. And when the expectation is not met, we have injustice. And enough injustice turn into righteousness. So two people arguing, they're both right, of course, right? Two countries fighting, they're both right as well. So to me, all truth are simply true per the person holding the truth. You cannot convince anybody that your truth is better than the other person's truth. In Chinese, there's an idiom called a frog in the well. Okay. It's meant to be a derogatory term, saying like, oh, you are just a frog in the well. Okay. Meaning the sky you see are so pathetic and it's just wrong. And to me, all of us are frogs in the well. All of us. We can only see our own patch of sky. And the best way to communicate is to say, that's the color or that's the whatever of the patch of my sky from my well. What does your look like? Then we start to communicate. So to me, this is very, very important, as a person living life and as a, so-called doctor in a clinic. All truths are true. Then we don't have to attack anybody and we don't have to defend our position either. If your truth is true, so is mine. Then we can have a really good conversation. Then maybe we can switch wells and say, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely, I mean, what you just told me was actually true. I do wish, warring countries can change places and see the other side, and maybe we won't be in wars anymore. But until that time, all truths are true. We change the world by changing nobody else but ourselves. Okay. So believe it or not, I just walked through all the components of the functional human system. It's really that simple. Okay. Okay. So then we get into what I call the suffering loop. Okay. So first, the external inputs establish trigger database, right? Entries in the trigger database. For example, PTSD, right? Um, or a child experienced divorce, for example, right? Um, this entry gets into the trigger database, and there's a certain amount of reflex involved as well. Okay. And then there's knowledge inside, and it's like, okay, this person is evil, and that person is no good, and nobody cares about me, and okay? So there's tremendous amount of judgment as well. And the suffering loop goes on and on and on and on. There's one huge attribute of the left and right brain. And again, I favor no brain system. Okay. To me, all these are critical for each and every one of us. The left and right brain's job is to make sure things are right. Okay, period. So if something cannot be resolved, it has to loop. It has to continue to solve it. Ignore doesn't work. Forget doesn't work. This is what keep people, awake at night. Right? This is what's keeping vigilance going all the time. I call this the suffering loop. Okay, and we see this in PTSD, we see this in addiction, we see this in anxiety, depression, different personality, narcissistic personality, um, you know, OCD and perfectionist, you name it. It's basically running this loop all the time. Judgment, judgment, judgment. Do I get confirmation? Do I get confirmation? Is this correct? You know, you know. So this is just like this loop. Just keep re-evaluating every second. Every millisecond of the day. It's exhausting for a lot of people. So to me, addiction. Um, I look at addiction as a solution to this insufferable loop. And the only way for them to get out of it is to do these addictive behavior so they don't have to experience this loop. I've seen people getting out of this loop in the clinic, And all of them say, all of them describe the same thing. They're just saying, John, you know what? It's so quiet. That's what inner peace really means. It's so quiet in there. Okay. So in the clinic, the way we get out of this suffering loop is to activate the vision loop. Okay. So I call this vision noble horse, our midbrain. Okay. Um, so this is what I do, okay, in the clinic. So first of all, we have what they call guiding principles. Okay. So I got 4 guiding principles. So this, this midbrain essentially needs a guiding principle. Okay. What's your guiding principle? I'm going to explain mine, and um, feel free to install yours. Okay. Um, my guiding principles have 4. Okay. They're essentially one, but in practice, there are 4. First of all, there's loving kindness. Do I know what it is? I don't know. It's just a thought. Okay. My thought is there's loving kindness, and I can connect to it. Okay. Where do I connect to it? I connect to it from my third eye. Why third eye? Because third eye is the part of the what we call the do channel that goes from our essentially our perineum along the spine, enter our midbrain, energize the entire midbrain, and come out of the third eye point or in between the eyebrows. So in the clinic, I will ask a person to say, okay, connect to loving kindness from your third eye. And people normally ask me, like, what is loving kindness? I said, whatever that is, doesn't matter. Just have this thought. Just have this thought that I am connecting to loving kindness. And when you do that, the channel that goes from our perineum along the spine into the midbrain, along the midbrain, energize the entire midbrain. A lot of people actually feel, my gosh, my brain just feels different. And there's, again, no magic, okay? Because we're all equipped with this channel. It's just this channel doesn't run when we feel depressed, suppressed, or I'm surviving rather than thriving. And then any functional person, basically all people, have a heart of gold. A lot of people want to say, John, nah, not everybody for sure. How about Hitler? How about this? How about that? Okay, how about child molesters? I don't know them. Okay, but do I have a heart of gold? Does my family have a heart of gold? Does my friend have a heart of gold? Do my patients have heart of gold? So this is my practice. Okay, I'm not gonna because if we have to judge a person to have a heart of gold or not based on words or behaviors, we can pretty much conclude that nobody has a heart of gold. It's very difficult to live through life without being mean or, you know, did something that hurt somebody, whether intentionally or unintentionally. The real question is, can we still love? Can we still connect to people without condition? And that's what the midbrain is all about. That's why the heart has no database. And to me, heart of gold just means this heart of gold of mine, which can love and connect at any point in time, is never ever tarnished. It's forever mine to use at any point, in any time, in any condition. Heart of gold. The third is I have a purpose. And every time I say this to my new patients, especially cancer patients, they will say, "Oh, John, once I heal or recover from this cancer, then I will have my purpose." And I say, "No, you have a purpose right now. Every moment that we live, we have a purpose. We may not know what it is, but it doesn't mean we don't have one. We may be the smallest blades of grass in a giant sequoia forest, but we have a purpose. Nothing else outside of humanity is concerned about its purpose. Nothing. But because we're educated, right? We compare, we have standards of what we do, what we contribute, and we call that purpose, right? No, we have a purpose at any point in time. If I'm going through depression, severe depression right now, it has its purpose. If I'm going through cancer right now, I better have some purpose out of this. If I'm going through PTSD, Parkinson's disease, the very belief that this means something, it's purposeful, get us to be so empowered rather than so disempowered like a victim. I have a purpose. Get our channels in the front that goes through the perineum, through our belly button, the middle of our chest, all the way into our, through our chin into our mouth. This is what we call the Ren channel, to flow like nothing else. This is the thriving energy that we have. I have a purpose. So in the clinic, and I always ask people to do stupid things, is from their heart, whisper, shout, or curse, as long as they want, I have a purpose. A lot of people, when they do that, they stop because they feel this rush of anger coming up. And that's the point I say, welcome back your anger. Because anger with judgment is angry. That's the thing you don't want. But anger, when it's pure, is the very foundation of courage. And courage is what we need to change our life, to really get out of the suffering loop. We need courage. We need the sense that I belong in this world. I have a purpose. And the last one is I have a choice at all times. And I am sure people find all kinds of things, all kinds of reasons why I have no choice. I'm married, I have kids, and what choice do I have? Um, and honestly, we can be irresponsible. The boss asks us to stay late for work, and man, I really don't want to do it, but what choice do I have? You can absolutely say no and maybe get fired. The very sense that I have no choice is a pure victim. We give up our power all the time without even thinking about it. What choice do I have? I have to pay tax. What choice do I have? No, you don't have to pay tax. You can choose not to pay tax and go to jail or escape or find an island or hide in the forest. You still have choices. But the very moment that we feel, we believe, and we accept that I have no choice, that's when we don't have power. And power, again, is what we need to get out of the suffering loop. So in the clinic, this is what we do within 1 minute and activate this entire midbrain path. And let me share this as a story. Okay, so I have a lady in her 70s. She was molested and raped by her own dad when she was young. And she has severe knee issues, among other ailments. And so she's been living her entire life with this huge amount of trauma and pain, and which translated into her family life. She had a wonderful husband, very caring and loving, and several kids. Right? So when she was talking to me, I said, John, I really need to get my knees fixed. My knees are killing me. And then I said, well, you know what? Um, do you want to get out of the suffering loop? Do you want to connect to your dad so you don't have to carry this continuously? And she looked at me very, very angrily, as if she's gonna hit me in the head. And she said, you want me to do what? How can you ask me to do that? I told her I care about your well-being. And her husband almost, her husband was right by her side. And from what I can see, he almost kneeled down and said, honey, would you please give it a try? Okay. She did not. Okay. She actually sort of stormed out of the clinic. 2 weeks later, she came back and she looked into my eyes and told me that she was ready. So got her on the table, went through this drill. Okay. So this is pretty standard in my clinic. Okay. So we get her to be in her body, okay, by focusing on her perineum and elevate it or contract it ever so as slightly as you possibly can. And the reason for this is to reassociate for a lot of people with their body, okay, especially with sexual trauma. So got her to do that and spend a little bit of time doing that, and get her to put her hand on her heart and say, I have a purpose, and get her to say it out loud. In the beginning, it's very, very difficult. The energy that goes from the chest, essentially the heart, for a lot of people cannot reach their mouth. They cannot speak from their heart. The energy is literally blocked, okay, from the heart to the mouth. They cannot say anything out of their heart. Everything has to come from the left and right brain, calculated, reviewed, evaluated, make sure it's correct. So I get her to say this from her heart. I have a purpose. Multiple, 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 multiple times. Until I can feel that her channel, her Ren channel in the front, okay, from her chest actually reach her throat, then goes into her mouth. By the way, channels can be felt by hand very, very reliably. And I'll share that later on. And then we'll get her to connect to loving kindness from her third eye, which was actually very easy, which was very quite easy for her to do because she is loving. She's very, very kind, actually. So for a lot of people, this is not a problem. You know, third eye connect to loving kindness, easy peasy. And then when I asked her to connect to her dad's heart of gold, her dad has long passed away. Right? She had a lot of difficulty, a lot of difficulty. You can see this in her eyes, in her body, in her face. Okay, very, 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 very hard for her to do that. But she did. She did. Then I asked her to, again, from her heart, whisper, say, or shout, Dad, I love you unconditionally. And I asked her to say that for 1 minute, 60 seconds. Took her a long time to start. And the first few ones are very, very difficult, excruciatingly difficult. But she continued. She went through that difficult phase. She went through anger. She went through sobbing. And then she was peaceful. All this took about 1 minute. So in the clinic, that's what that's what when the time is right, that's what we do. Okay, again, I emphasize when the time is right. You can't just, a person come straight into the clinic the first time and we do this. It doesn't work. There's a lot of preparation work. There's a lot of commitment. A lot of things has to be in place. The person doesn't, the person essentially are ready to remove from the victim position once and for all. So this actually happens. Okay, this is what I call the epiphany loop. Quiet, peace, tears without sound. Because within all of us, no matter how we see our parents, we all have these triggers to love them unconditionally and be loved by them unconditionally at the same time. This is primal, okay? And when we have issues with our parents, we have issues with everybody else because all these triggers are global. Okay, we cannot differentiate. These triggers do not differentiate. They do not say, oh, you are so and so, and you are my parents, therefore I have these emotions towards you. Oh, you are not, therefore I don't have these emotions. No, it doesn't work that way. All triggers are protective, meaning they want to protect us from what happened before. They are persistent, meaning they have no concept of space and time, similar to that 84-year-old lady. And they are global, meaning anything that match this lookup table gets triggered. No question asked. There's no judgment in there. There's no name. They only have attributes from the five senses or 5+1 senses. And then I always ask, talk to people and say, okay, once you experience this epiphany loop, all these protective triggers, all these knowledge, all these judgment, all these injustice, all these righteousness will come back with a vengeance. Okay, you have this protection surge right after. Okay, within maybe a day or two or three, within a week, basically. I said this to a one of my patients who's have alcohol addiction, and he actually went through the epiphany loop. Okay. And when I, you know, talked to him about this, he was actually laughing. It's like, John, no, no, it's not going to happen to me. Um, and a week later, he actually had a relapse, a huge one. Right? And when the relapse was done, in about 2 weeks, he came back and saw and saw me and actually sobbed in the clinic. It's like, uh, I said, this is a normal behavior. Okay. This means you have a truly functional system. Your triggers have been protecting you for decades. And now you're become a loving person and you're willing to love unconditionally. Your entire life is going upside down. Your most loyal protectors are trying to protect you from doing these stupid unconditional love things. So to me, this is the real power of this functional human system is to be able to say, okay, why do we have these behaviors? And why we have a hard time changing it? Even though we feel so clear that we're going to change it this time. Why do we feel this immense pullback that drag us deeper than ever before? This is why. And this is the time that this is the time we love ourselves. This is the time that we truly practice all emotions are true and all truths are true. When all these emotional surges coming in, or all these protection surge coming in, we got to embrace ourselves even tighter. This is when we truly love ourselves. Instead of saying that evil part, just come and grab me again. We don't have an evil part. So this will cycle quite a few times. So this is when the guiding principle becomes so important, and all the mindset becomes so important. And all the mindfulness becomes so important. This is where mindfully center becomes so critical. Because when we experience these surges, and we're still upright, and we're still mindful, and we're still feeling, we're still embracing, we're still trusting, we still know we have a heart of gold, and I have a purpose, and I have a choice. That's how we start to transform these trigger databases or these databases. That's when we continue to remind our most loyal protectors, you know what? We are safe now. Thank you so much for decades of protection, but we're safe now. Time has changed. I have changed. We're safe now. This is profound inner work. Okay, nobody else can do this but ourselves. So ultimately, after we have gone through the suffering loop, we go through the epiphany loop, and we went through the protection surge, then we need to go back and harmonize our entire system. Okay. Our entire system will run in harmony because life requires all the noble horses. We just need to get them going in the same direction along the same kind of rhythm instead of fighting each other or pulling a dead weight that used to be called the midbrain. So to me, this is the vibrant loop. This is how we can live vibrantly in this world, no matter our condition. I've treated end-stage patients. Okay, I think I'm one of the few um, practitioners that are willing to take end-stage. Okay, and people who are weeks, if not days, away from death, essentially. Okay, why? Because I've treated people honestly to their very last days, and their channels are running beautifully. Okay, their pain becomes different when they connect to loving kindness, and they still have a purpose. Why? Because they're still loving. They're still connecting via, through loving kindness to their loved one's heart of gold. They're still in this inner harmony. Their body is going, but nothing in here changed. And to me, that's the most precious gift anyone can leave their loved ones. This immense and profound peace that I will love you and I will connect to you across space, across time. There's not going to be any condition that can change that. To me, that is the ultimate medicine. There's no medicine more powerful than that. And we can do that right now. We don't need to do this until our final breath. We can do this anytime we want. If we can ever watch a movie and get agitated, excited, sobbing and crying and whatever, we can do this. We have all the faculty, we have all the hardware to do this. Okay, 8:35. Okay, really close now. Last slide, okay, for the day. So we have these four noble horses, right? Um, and we can add another one, and that's called AI. What AI does is actually very interesting if we are in harmony. because AI doesn't judge. AI to me, I call it the noble horse boost. Okay. It does what we want it to do. And it's very, very interesting when we introduce that into our life. Okay. For example, um, I am curious of um, let's see. I'm curious of all the fallacies from our left and right brain. Okay, this is a very quick AI generated stuff. Okay, essentially I ask, it's like, okay, tell me all the fallacies of our left and right brain, of our judgmental brain, essentially. Okay, so the first thing comes up is the confirmation bias. Whatever gets in first stays there as visually as possible. Okay, so if I'm convinced or if I'm told I was born with, a evil side and needs spiritual um, guidance or teaching or brokerage, I will actually hang on to that dearly for a long, long time. That's what's called confirmation bias. Okay, and there's all kinds of things you can do. Okay, um, so there's this, or emotions. Okay, give me the primary and complex emotions. So there are anger, fear, sadness, and okay. And we could go through this. So what AI allows me to do, or native processing, right? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, verbal logic, intuitive. I think there are more, and we can dive into deeper. Okay? But what AI does is it gets me to be a driver and say, okay, give me the entire landscape, and let's explore that um, very, very quickly. Okay? Uh, so I do use AI, and I do find it useful. I do find it work really well with my internal noble horses. Um, yeah. Okay. So that's the functional human system in. Um, I'm going through this as fast as I can. Um, So this is one part of MCA. Okay, MCA needs a framework, and this framework so far, even though I'm very, very critical of this framework, I continue to evaluate it, continue to find holes in it. So far, um, it explains everything I see. It matches every condition that that I encounter in the clinic and in life and in myself. Right? Um, and ultimately, what's interesting about this framework is allows me to feel I am no different than anybody else. And everybody is no different than me. So back to this the story of this person that um, you know, my acupuncture friend who does this 7 needle thing, right? When we have firsthand experience using whatever system, okay, I use the functional human system to really experience myself, then everybody I see, I honestly feel like we're no different. So when I see a person on the street, or in the clinic, um, I really don't feel I am serving another person, or helping another person, or somehow I need to prove myself that I am capable of treating another person. Because all I gotta do is to feel. Because we have essentially the exact same system. There's variation to it, But when I understand these variations, when I have experienced firsthand these variations, they are the same thing. Okay, so that's the functional human system. Okay, next week we're gonna continue the MCA. So next week we're gonna go into mindsets. Okay, so mindset definitions, and this actually affects our reality. So there's quite a few slides that that to me are important mindsets. Then we'll go through channels, we'll go through TWANA, neuromuscular systems, and then we'll go into case studies. Okay. All the case studies are meant to tie everything I share together. Um, they're not meant to be copied as protocols because I have never tried the same thing twice on different people. And I don't believe that will work either. So, um, okay. Any comments, questions, or um, anything I can explain further? Um, it's 8:42, but I can definitely stay for more time. Yeah, yeah, please turn on mic if you have any comments or questions. And hopefully this resonate with you. Okay. Map your map. To me, it's like if you cannot map, what you're experiencing or what you observed into this functional human system, then it's not worth anything. Um, but if you can somehow map into this, um, then it might be interesting, right? So, yeah. Okay, if there's no question or comments, we'll end today. And I will um, I will put this on YouTube and send out notice. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week.